right, Councilmember, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So City Council's fall session begins this week. What are some of your top priorities going into the fall?
Sure. I'm going to continue to go deeper on the subject areas that I've already been working on and came to council to work on. For one, I'll continue to work on the issue of affordable housing. We are currently experiencing a housing crisis in West and Southwest Philadelphia and across the city. This year in particular, I'm going to be focused on the preservation of affordable housing. Many people are aware of, because it's been in the news, what's going on at the University City Townhomes site, for example, where you have a low-income housing development that was supported by a federal subsidy that's now expired. And so once the subsidy expires, whomever owns the property has the option of keeping that property in service as affordable housing or selling that property, which can lead to displacement of many people. And so that's what's going on at 40th and Market. But the townhome site is just one example of literally thousands of units across the city that will have their subsidies expire over the next 5 to 10 years, and there's really no plan for that. And so I want to do what I can at the local level to ensure that people are protected and to ensure that we're not losing, affordable housing and displacing people, particularly low-income people, particularly Black and Brown people from our neighborhoods. So we're looking into various solutions that came from a hearing we did last year on this same topic. Some of the things that we're exploring are expanding the notice period by which an owner has to, give notice to folks that they don't intend to renew their subsidies, requiring a right of first offer, or requiring a right of first refusal, either to the city or to qualified entities that do want to buy, these affordable housing projects and keep them in service as affordable housing, or implementing a tenant right to purchase, which has happened in other places. So this will be a huge priority for me this session and in this year. And not only am I going to be plugging away at this on the local level, I'll also be looking for partnership and support from the state and federal levels of government. The program that we have now that subsidizes affordable housing, whether it be through HEP contracts or through low-income housing tax credits, there are these programs are in place because of partnerships at all levels of government. And we need that same level of partnership and participation to save these units. Another area that I'll be continuing to work on diligently is gun violence. In the past, I've been very vocal about the need for the city to have a more urgent and more comprehensive strategy. I pushed the mayor to declare a citywide emergency around the issue of gun violence. I fought with my colleagues for record level funding for violence prevention and intervention initiatives. This session, I think I want to focus more in on how we reach youth and how we do more to, to calm conflicts that are arising because of street group violence. On Friday, all of us were heartbroken because Tiffany Fletcher, a Parks and Rec employee working at the Mill Creek Rec Center, which is in my district, was caught in the crossfire among two groups of youth, two groups of very, young teens who had guns and were shooting at one another. And she got caught in the crossfire and she unfortunately died because of those injuries. And so I've been watching the violence that has been happening in my district and across the city, and a lot of it is are these, conflicts that are arising between different youth tied to various blocks or streets or areas of West and Southwest Philly who are feuding with one another. And I think that, if the city wants to get a handle on gun violence, we have to understand what's going on with young people. Why are these conflicts coming about? Who can we find within neighborhoods to talk to our young people and maybe calm down these conflicts? And I also think that we need to do more to get guns off the street and out of the hands of young people. So those are the two areas specifically with regards to gun violence that I see myself focusing on this session. And then I would say city services. One thing that, has become very apparent to me in my time as a council member is that every neighborhood in Philadelphia is not served equitably as it relates to city services. And so I'm talking about everything from, trash not being picked up on time in certain neighborhoods to abandoned cars being left on the streets in parts of West and Southwest to, illegal dumping that happens repeatedly and there's no real proactive strategy for it. Street lights being out in neighborhoods where you are having issues with gun violence or carjackings, and also, the city being unable to really deal with nuisance and blighted properties that are leading to gun violence and illicit drug activity within our neighborhoods. I was able to work with our city controller last year to pull data on 311 service calls. And what we found were in the neighborhoods where gun violence is highest, we're getting the most 311 service calls for these types of issues. If you overlay those service calls on a map, it's almost the same map as where gun violence is happening over and over and over again. And so I think if the city was better at delivering basic city services, and if the city did that in a more equitable way, it would not only show our residents that we care about them and that we care about the places where they live, it could also make our neighborhoods a lot safer. And so those are the things that I think will define my work. And those are all areas that I've worked on in the past. And I'll add one new area. Life sciences, and making sure that the city has a robust workforce development strategy to put our residents to work in all of this new lab space and manufacturing space that's being built, particularly in the third district. We're seeing that much of the development that's happening in West and Southwest Philadelphia is being driven by the growth of life sciences companies. And we want to make sure that, in particular, Black and Brown residents of the third district are able to get connected to those jobs. Those are jobs where, you don't necessarily have to have a degree, but if you have specialized training, you can earn a family sustaining wage, right? And so as these facilities are being built, I don't just want our folks being in the security guard jobs or the janitorial jobs, which is and those jobs are very admirable, but our folks also deserve to be in those labs, right? And to participate in this new economy that is starting in the third district. And so those are the things that will define my agenda this session, but probably over the next year and probably the next few years, because those are big things.
Yeah, sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the revenue workshops your office has been hosting?
Oh, sure. So we have our first revenue workshop this evening at Transfiguration Church, but it's a part of a series of workshops that we're doing to make sure that people understand all the changes that have happened with their assessments, that they understand what programs are available to them to, alleviate relieve some of the tax burden, and that they understand the appeals process as well. I know many people were shocked when they received their new assessments, and this is our way of helping residents to really deal with that.
Okay. One of the key drivers of violence in the city is poverty.
Mhm.
So do you see, you had mentioned a few things that are going to help alleviate poverty. Do you see council in general taking steps this fall that would work to break the 26% poverty rate?
Sure. I mean, and I haven't kind of touched base with every council member to know exactly what it is that they're working on, but this, the reduction of poverty is an area that council has been focused on for the past several years. So I do see us continuing to work in that area, whether it be making sure that youth have connections to jobs, or making sure that people have housing opportunity, making sure that people have the ability to advance economically. I see that as an area that council will continue to work in.
Okay, I'd like to bring in Denise Clay Murray here on Philadelphia Homeline.
Thank you for joining us, Council Member. I really appreciate it.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, you mentioned the city's gun violence issue, and also the possibility of a citywide state of emergency. One of the things that a lot of us asked is, what would that mean? What would that look like? And is that still on the table?
I mean, for me, the state of emergency or having an emergency declared was never about, for example, a particular resource that opens. It was more so about the city creating a platform to bring all of its resources to this effort every single day. And I tried to outline that for the mayor. So if we were, I think, we were approaching this as an emergency, for example, I think that all of the city's operating agencies would be meeting, on probably a daily basis to look at what neighborhoods are most suffering from gun violence right now, and to decide how we as a collective devote resources to those people in our neighborhoods. That means that I'm not pushing streets to get street lights turned on in neighborhoods where there are rampant shootings. That means that we have an easier time working with L&I to shut down problem properties that are leading to shootings, because every agency would have at the top of its agenda gun violence. That's what I'm coming to work to focus on, to make sure that I'm using whatever resources I have as a commissioner or agency head to make sure that to help this problem. I think that if we we're addressing this as an emergency, people wouldn't be in the dark or confused about what the city's strategy is. When we were going through the COVID emergency, you saw the health commissioner on the TV every day, many times with the mayor, every day, talking about case counts, talking about what the city was doing to make the situation better, and talking to people about how they can protect themselves. If we were truly treating this as an emergency, I think we would be mobilizing, not only the resources of the city, but, the private sector, our business community, our institutions, to have them at the table, directing resources towards the neighborhoods that are struggling right now. And we would also have better relationships with our community partners on the ground. And so I'm not saying that we're not doing anything. There are many people that are working very hard on this issue. But if the question to me is, do I think that, every city agency is coming to the table every day to talk about how we should problem solve on this issue in concert with the community? And if the question is whether residents in neighborhoods have a good understanding of the city's strategy and how they should plug into it, my answer to that would be no. So
Okay.
I am, I use the language of an emergency to push the city towards making sure that this issue that's taking the lives, particularly of Black and Brown young people on a daily basis, is top of mind for everyone who's sort of working here.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned the University City Homes. First of all, what is the status of those residents? Have they been moved out? Where did they go? Was there any place for them to go? And also, with affordable housing, you know, there comes like federal money, like Section 8 vouchers and different things. Has there been any move to try to get the federal government involved to deal with this issue?
Sure, and I have to be very careful about what I say here. The city of Philadelphia is currently being sued by the owner of the University City Townhomes around legislation that I pushed through council, which protects affordable housing in the area where the townhome sits. And so they filed a suit back in March of 2022 against the city of Philadelphia, against myself as a council member, and against me as an individual in federal court. And we're currently still fighting that lawsuit.
So, because there seems to be a lot of this going on, particularly in your district.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a district that's already had its share of gentrification issues, or particularly around the University of Penn area. I guess, how are people tackling this? What are you hearing from your constituents about all of this change, and particularly about the fact that it feels to many folks that we've talked to like they're being consciously displaced?
I mean, I definitely think this is one of the biggest issues beyond gun violence that the city has to contend with right now. How we have equitable neighborhoods, and how the opportunity that is, coming to the city and existing in the city is for everyone, right? Particularly the Black and brown folks that have been here holding down our neighborhoods. It's certainly been my core issue. That's why I did the legislation, that I'm currently being sued for in the area that includes the townhomes. That's why I passed a law last year called the Mixed Income Neighborhoods Overlay that requires that at least 20% of housing units in any development that's 10 units or more, whether it's home ownership or rental, be affordable. And so that is a law that passed last year that the city began implementing in July, and I hope that it will generate a lot more affordability in new development. That's why I've been so focused on pushing the city to use publicly owned land expressly for the purpose of affordable housing. So I think residents rightly feel that housing is moving beyond their reach. But certainly, as a council member, this has been the issue, that I've focused on most beyond gun violence, because I know it's top of mind for my constituents.
Okay, now I have one last question. You're going into a council session on Thursday where you're going to only have 13 people, including yourself. And that means that, there's probably going to be a little bit of upheaval because of that, because folks, everything the council does is set for 17 people. Talk a little bit about, how you think this council session is going to work, especially since, there's only 13 of you, which means if you need 9 votes to pass something and 12 to override it, if the mayor vetoes it, you have no margin for error.
Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of guidance on that. You guys will have to interview Darryl Clark to really get a better. I'm not sitting with a lot of guidance on how things will operate. I think the council president is working with, law and other entities to define that.
Okay, well, thank you. And we'll go back to Larry McGlynn, and you're still listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM.
Thank you, Denise. Councilmember, I just have 2 quick questions for you here. What should the city do with its budget surplus?
I think, the city should be all in on affordable housing and making sure that everyone has a home. And the city should be all in on stopping gun violence, whether that be, supporting community groups that are doing great violence prevention work, or finding a way to connect young people in the path of violence to meaningful income opportunities, whatever it may be, to the extent, we have to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe in order to thrive as a city. So those would be my two, top priorities. And I think that, we should not be shy about spending on those priorities. They're very important.
And whether we like it or not, we are in the midst of the 2023 mayoral election here in Philadelphia. What qualities are you looking for in a new mayor?
I'm looking for someone that is passionate and has a bold vision for moving us out of what feels like a very dark time right now, and who can wrap their arms around communities and people in our communities and give them the level of support they need right now, whether that be around, supporting communities through the gun violence epidemic, or making sure that everyone has adequate housing opportunities, making sure that young people have safe, productive things to do, so that we're not in this dynamic where libraries aren't open enough and rec centers aren't open enough, making sure that our school facilities are safe. I feel like we've gone through an incredibly tough 3 years, and you can feel that in the city. It's visceral. And so, we need someone who can stand with residents and show a level of empathy for what folks are going through right now, but also offer a vision for getting us, that everybody participates in, for getting us to a different place. That's what I'm excited about in terms of, hearing folks' ideas and visions in this primary.
All right, Councilmember Jamie Gauthier, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.